It's a time package from China time, so let's go. If you do want to do a little bit of a PC building, but you don't want to have like this massive mainboard, you want to buy something maybe ready to go, plug and play, MinisForum got you covered. So this is actually based on a mini PC solution, but we do need to buy some parts and we need to do all kinds of DIY. So this is going to be absolutely a lot of fun because we're going to be have some really cool overall specifications when it comes to the CPU part. GPU part, we're going to be having slightly different specs because normally with this series of AMD we're going to be having an onboard like the 780M, and that's not the case because they actually lowered the GPU performance with a different kind of version that we're going to be talking about later. And that is for the simple reason because this thing is actually made for having like a super compact form factor mini PC, but also if you want to build yourself one with Windows 11, we're going to be needing some RAM and you can implement a GPU. Yep, we can upgrade this with an onboard GPU. That's pretty cool. So today we're going to be using 2TB storage, 990 Pro of Samsung. It was in sale, so why not? Nevertheless, we're going to be needing all kinds of extra parts, so it's not only buying the base overall product, we're going to be needing different kind of parts too. So the USB ports are having 3.2, Gen 1 and Gen 2, as you can see over here, some USB-C type A, C, and the overall specs is pretty decent. And I must say we do have like all of the ports that we're going to be needing for having an overall cool build. So this is an ITX mainboard, yeah, and if you want to build your tiny mini PC, you can actually do that. I think it's pretty cool, so let's get this thing out of the packaging and let's do a little bit of an unboxing and also assembly of the new parts. We're also having brackets, and the brackets are going to be assembled on the passive cooling block, so we're going to be implementing a fan. I think that's going to be something that is really convenient because these AMDs can become really hot, and of course all the necessary screws to assemble this in the case itself, and of course the very long special screws for putting the 120mm fan on. So let's get this thing out of the packaging. Let's be very careful because this thing is getting stuck because the EO shield already has been assembled with this particular edition. And yep, we do need to assemble the memory and the NVMe. So here's just a quick overview of all of the connections. We're just going to be having everything we're going to be needing. We do only have like 4 USB ports, but yeah, with a form factor like this, we're going to be having some limitations. So we have like 2.4G LAN, we're having an HDMI display out, a fast USB port and USB 3.0, and of course the PC Express Pro slot. We can implement an extra GPU. Makes this build so much cooler. So if you're going to combine this with the right GPU, you can even play some games with it. But also I just wanted to test it out, like how does it actually work? Can we actually plug this thing fairly easy inside of a case, and is it going to be a fun overall assembly? This is have like the original connectors like a mainboard, like with the A pin of the CPU. We're going to be having 2 slots for NVMe where I'm going to be using 1 for now, but that's pretty cool. So if you want to expand it, you don't need to have like all kinds of extra 2.5 inch of 3.5 inch drives. So we're having 3 fan pin connectors. We're also going to be having the option for 2 NVMe's, and that's something I'm going to be utilizing in the future. But for now, we're going to be assembling everything and just have some fun. I want to assemble the fastest memory this thing can actually hold. I think it's 5200 megahertz. So having 2 slots of 16 gigabytes. So let's get ourselves the 990 Pro of Samsung for the maximum speed of loading into Windows. I'm going to be using Windows 11, the Home Edition for now. What I wanted to do is an extra passive cooling on my NVMe. So with some of the mainboards I have, let's say, tested out and built my own computer with, is having these, let's say, overall passive cooling blocks, but that's not the case, so you need to buy one of them separately. They're not really expensive. So all of the parts have been assembled now, and what we're going to be doing is grabbing ourselves like all of the necessary parts. However, I later on into the video I was assembling, I was thinking like, you know what, I'm not going to be using RGB fans. I'm just going to keep it like one simple theme. The reason I went for this particular case because this thing can actually utilize a massive RTX card if I want to. Case wise, I went for this because of the space. I want to implement a bigger GPU. But I must say that I'm really flabbergasted because this thing was really inexpensive and assembly was so easy. Okay, so we've actually finished the build. It's not my cleanest work, but it's functional. I made the decision to put a 120mm fan on the heatsink because the heatsink passive is good, but it gets really hot when you're going to be pushing this thing to the limit. Another 2 fans for actually getting all of the hot air out of the case. And we're going to be having one right over there that's actually pushing in fresh air. And I can tell you this thing is It's very nicely. It's not too loud, and I'd say overall this thing is giving enough air in. Actually wanted to put in another fan, but there is no space. I think this will do with the heatsink situation, so we need to figure out maybe buying a smaller one or doing some overall, let's say, configuration with different fans. But again, this is what it's going to be. But I'm going to be actually wanted to do is like I don't want to use a GPU for the simple reason I just wanted to see how far we can push it when it comes to the original specs. So yeah, let's talk specs. I must say that the case looks pretty cool, so with this particular build. Also you can actually see the fan in there spinning. However, at first I wanted to go with a full color master or thermal take, like say RGB craziness, but I went for completely like dark mode. No extra lights implemented, but how about the specs? Let's go with the temperatures, push this thing to the limit, and what kind of actually specifications are we getting? So what I already mentioned before, like I did some test benches on, let's say, actually with and without a cooler, and I noticed like this thing can become really hot. So I thought like, yeah, let's put a fan on it. We have the option, so why not? And the fan is like really inexpensive. So let's go with that. So you can really see I did some testing over here before, and this thing is hitting like 78.8 Celsius. So yeah, that's what's going on when it comes to the temperature. Like it's now running around like 30.56 Celsius. It's a little bit hotter if you're going to be having no fan, but in general I think it's not bad at all. Like it's actually, the package itself is pulling 100.51 watts when it comes to the power. So power wise this thing can do a lot. So we do have like all of the fans on the over here on the main board, so we can actually see what's going on. Let's lower this over here. You can see even some more temperatures. So, okay, so when it comes to the temperature itself, let's do a little bit of fun thing, but let's do a little bit of a test benching, and I will show you what I mean when it comes to stressing and seeing how this thing can actually become, because, you know, it's no joke, but I must say I must have reached the point that this is not going to be an overall problem. Stressing the CPU now on the maximum over here. So you can actually see that I'm running CPU Z before we're going to be doing a little bit of chit chat about the specs. But yeah, this thing is getting quite hot, but not to the point. Like I did see that it's getting into the 90 Celsius if you're not having any fan. So you guys just going to be using this thing, let's say just on an overall, let's say passive base. And personally, I think it is a possibility, but I will not go there. But with stressing the CPU, already showing you over here at the right that this thing can become almost 80 Celsius. But enough playing around with the benching or the stressed CPU. Let's talk about the specs. Let's go full wicked nerdy mode. So we're going to be running here an AMD Ryzen 9 over here, also called Dragon Range. I must say that is kind of a cool name. It says actually over here max TDP 55 watts, but okay. So we're going to be having the AMD Ryzen 7940HX. So this thing is absolutely quite powerful when it comes to the overall chipset, and I must say that this is pretty cool. Over here we're having the mainboard manufacturer. So we do actually have a PCI Express 5.0. So at this point we're running in total at 32 GB DDR5, and we're going to be having dual channel. So what is interesting with this mainboard, this thing comes in actually with an AMD Ryzen on board, but it's only going to be having the 610M. So, you know, this mainboard is actually made for upgrading it within GPU, and we can go in depth about it, like comparing this with different GPUs, which NVIDIA GPU, for example, is going to be in better, but still in cheaper solution if you want to do a little bit more gaming. So that's actually what's going on with the specs with CPU-Z. What's going on when you're going to be having just an onboard GPU, and this particular GPU is slightly slower than your typical, let's say, mini PC I've reviewed here on the channel, because most of them are coming with the 780M if I'm recalling it correctly. But still, you can still play a lot of stuff on board, and that's what I want to actually focus on now. Yeah, this is not going to be a problem whatsoever. With older games running on 1080p high graphics like Blaze Rush, this game runs pretty smooth, having 150, let's say 150 frames. So this is absolutely a very cool overall situation. So if you still want to play some simple games, older stuff, you can still play it on this onboard GPU. And if you're going to be playing, not like say this crazy unlimited frames per second, just 60 frames per second with just an indie game like the Hunt Down game, no problem. You're going to be even hitting like 40, let's say 50% of the GPU capacity. In a game like this, doesn't it get really never bored? Such a cool game. Absolutely worth picking up. And I think it's pretty cool that we can play all of these actually like two-dimensional games, indie games, and just a simple GPU on board, or simple. And it doesn't really matter what I'm going to be throwing at it. So far, all of the games, my favorite personal games, are working absolutely great. So we're a little bit afraid we're going to be having a little bit of problems with some games, with the simple reason because we're going to be playing games and we're going to be having a lower power GPU. But no, simple games is not going to miss you whatsoever. So let's get into some more GPU hungry games. There we go. One of the many games I will never get bored of. I really suck at this, man. I need to play more games and stop reviewing stuff. Whee! So where a game of the Crash Bandicoot trilogy is already an older game, I just love to test it out because I just love Crash Bandicoot. But the point is, if you're going to be looking on the onboard GPU, so we do miss a little bit of power, and here we're going to be seeing some serious issues. So I've been putting this on, let's say, full HD, and we're going to be needing to lower the overall resolution to something else. Because, let's say 1280 by 1024, to maybe get some at least 60 frames per second. I think this is just one of the things that need to take consideration. Even not in the game, you can just see we're hitting like 53 frames per second. And I've played this game a couple of times now on many onboard GPUs, and you will notice that some of them, like the 780M and later models, have some really amazing onboard GPU power that we can actually play these games on pretty decent frame rates now. So, but unfortunately, still I need to scale it down to get at least like a full 60 frames. I did like choose a little bit of weird resolution because of the widescreen now, but I just wanted to actually make a point. If it comes to, let's say, the crazy GPU game hungry games, normally going to be needing an NVIDIA dedicated graphics card, so it's actually pretty cool that we can just play this. But on full HD, nope, this is not going to be something that we can actually play. So we should actually add a separate GPU to get like full, let's say the 60 frames on the situation on this particular chip here. So 24, 25 frames that we're getting when it comes to Crash Bandicoot and many other games. I was a big fan of fighting games, so let's get this show on the road, put it on full HD. I did notice when booting up, it was actually getting this thing on, let's say, low resolution, but I just want to push it to see what kind of frame rate we're getting with this onboard GPU. It's already a very old game when it comes to, let's say, the fighting scene. Yeah, so far, I must say that I'm quite surprised. You can see there's some frame dips over here when it comes to the intro, but getting into the gameplay, it's quite overall a good performance. And of course, if you're going to be playing some Street Fighter 6, the Tekken 8, stuff like that, yeah, that's going to be completely different. Of course, those can be tweaked and we can do some pretty cool things. The same goes if you're going to be having some AMD tricks, like FSR it's called. You can do some pretty cool things with newer kind of games. But you can see like 45 frames, so it does actually dip here and there. So, but we do have like an overall playable situation. But I just want to go some old school with some Tony Hawk, or at least semi-old school, because this is the remastered edition. And more difficult game to actually play on board, but I just want to see what's going on. Everything's set to low, no crazy stuff going on, no upscaling, just raw, full HD. I'm also doing that trick in the beginning and I'm just messing that up. But the point is actually, you can see we're having like 30 frames-ish per second. So yeah, for this low powered or this less powered, let's say onboard GPU. And of course what we can do is lower the resolution if you want to. I think I can even mess around with it if you want to have game options, video options. No, I cannot tweak it. That's a little bit unfortunate, but the point is, then we're going to be having overall better solution. And I keep messing up my tricks. but you're getting the overall, let's say, situation. Ooh, finally hit one. There we go. Ooh. Oh. So this thing is pretty cool when it comes for playing games with the onboard GPU. However, what about emulation performance? What can we actually do there? Because we do have less GPU power. So the Retro Beast from Chris Coolmod is one of those plug-and-play solutions that is fully optimized for mini PCs, and also this particular one. So yeah, this is going to be something we're going to be checking out, plugging it in, and we're just going to be doing a little bit of emulation testing, because despite a little bit less power GPU, the CPU power, it's absolutely a beast. A Retro Beast. But if you wonder how you're going to be setting up something like this, it's super easy. How? So in here we're going to be having the Retro Beast 64 coin ops. Yeah. Before you're going to be clicking on, let's say, the Retro Beast Mini 2 TB, you're going to be needing to set it up, and that is like a plug-and-play solution here. If you're actually in the main folder, what you need to do is go into the Wiki Plus. We're going to be having win-click install gaming drivers, and that's it. Install gaming drivers. You click it, and you can just easily, everything will be installed for you. DirectX is never going to be needing, and you're ready to go. And when everything is installed, you can enter your Retro Beast super easy like that. And you know, this is such an overall very cool tiny plug and play kit that contains all kinds of different stuff. However, with the power we're actually having now, we can just play all kinds of cool things. I just want to focus mainly on, let's say, the GameCube, some other things that are really interesting to actually emulate on this. But a simple reason, because it's not going to be something you know, I didn't like an in-depth video about it, so I don't want to focus too much on the simple stuff like the 8-bit, 16-bit, that run just fine. We already did some PC gaming in this case, testing it out. But you know, there's a lot of kind of cool stuff. So let's start off with some PlayStation 2, for example. And in here we can actually find all kinds of different games. And you know, where stuff mostly of the time don't work on simple, let's say, plug and play systems. With Empower actually running now, and we're not even using an extra GPU, we're going to be having some pretty good overall performance. But let's start off with some God of War, and I must say that when it comes to, let's say, this particular game, it's going to be more of the demanding games to actually to play on a mini PC, and we do actually have less power when it comes to the GPU. You can actually see that it is hitting 100% all the, I want to say all the time, but a lot of different times, but particularly now, because there is a lot of stuff going on, and I did see a minor dip, but this has to do because of the less GPU power. If we're going to be implementing an extra GPU, so let's say we're going to swapping it out and using an NVIDIA GPU, that is like an RTX card, it's going to be of course no problem. But I just wanted to see how far we can push it. What's the overall performance? There we can see there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to be having a lot of dips. But again, this is just due of the overall, let's say, GPU that is a very low tier version. Nevertheless, doesn't spoil the fun, because in the most time it's going to be having some really great performance. And it's just absolutely a fun thing to just see how far we can push the device itself. So like I mentioned before, like the God of War game was absolutely pushing this thing to the limit. But I just wanted to see, let's try another PlayStation game. But PlayStation 5 is still one of my favorites actually to play. And in here, I don't see any dips going on. And so there are many games are just perfectly playable. So moving on to the PlayStation 3, another amazing system with some really cool games. Afterburner Climax is actually what we're going to be testing out. So let's see how this thing is pushing to the limit. Wow, the arcade games were pretty extreme, but this running full speed, no problem. I'm really surprised how freaking optimized this thing is. So I actually set this to the 4K, or sorry, beyond 4K, 10 times resolution. This is not of the image, I need to say, because originally it was actually set to a different resolution. The original resolution he set it to was 4 times, but I just wanted to see how far we can push it. Let's see if we can put it on 4K rendering resolution. Because it's kind of cool to mess around, because like he did a lot of testing on this, and this is one of the reasons. It's a little bit of a bummer because, you know, that's the GPU, that's the general problem. But doesn't matter, let's put it back on the 1080p like he said, like he actually automatically put it, and it runs pretty good. So yeah, 1080p. So what's kind of cool that I tested out this particular, let's say, setup, this game, and I added, I think it was on like a GTX 960 from Nvidia, like a really cheap card. And that runs like 10 times resolution. So it's like a minor cheap card has like a massive difference when it comes for PlayStation portable gaming. I'm getting shot by every single guy over here. Just wanted to see what happens with Wii, Tatsunoko vs Capcom. Man, I love this game, so cool. But the thing is that the reason I wanted to actually check it out is with the simple reason you can actually see that it really struggles. And this has nothing to do with the overall image, but this is just of the onboard GPU. Again, I keep repeating myself on this point because I want to be clear that we're going to be having like such a low power GPU on this particular mainboard. And I thought like it's kind of interesting with a simple reason, because if you're looking at, let's say, mini PCs but having the same spec of the AMD Ryzen, I'm going to be having actually more power when it's 780M or so. And you know, at first I was thinking this is not going to be a big deal, but it actually is. But let's get into the game. Let's see if we're going to have an overall playable situation. But it actually would be fun to see what's happening if you're going to be playing this with an extra GPU. I think that everything was going to be running on perfect overall speed. Xbox 360, let's go! And in reason, I tested this actually on the 780M, and we had some really cool overall performance. But this is running like 18 frames per second. So yeah, we're definitely going to be needing an extra GPU upgrade if you want to go into a higher emulation performance. Oh yeah. The Wii was kind of a disaster with the Tatsunoko vs Capcom, but we can still play some GameCube. Yep, we can actually do that. But the thing is, it's also depending like what kind of system and what are you going to be playing. And you know, this is one of the things that we need to take consideration. Like we see, like if you're going to be really going to be having demanding games, it's going to be an overall, crazy overall solution. But emulation performance, we're going to be having a wall, and the wall is going to be not something of an optimized situation, because this overall image was actually made for a little bit more power GPU. But I just wanted to see how far we can push it and what is going on with this. If you want to see more about this image, you should check out the video. For now, I just wanted to see what's going on, because I know this image is so much more optimized than if you're going to be just, let's say, grabbing an emulator and slapping it on a mini PC like this. But we can still play a lot of cool things if it comes to Dreamcast, Sega Saturn and stuff like that. The MinisForum is a different approach, having a mini PC ITX solution so you can put it in a case. But I think the idea behind it is if you're going to be having like ultimate performance, yeah, we're going to be needing to add a GPU to it. So if you want to see a video about it, I can of course definitely make one. Let me know in the comments. And I think I have like an old GTX, but I also have an RTX 2070 somewhere laying around. So that was of course the idea behind this, that you're going to be adding another GPU to this ITX mainboard, build yourself a PC and have more like a semi-plug-and-play solution. Let me know in the comments what do you think of this, or do you just want to buy yourself a normal mini PC and just use it like that. Thank you all for watching, and it would be great to see you in the next video.